and Todd breaking down the rookies. And so far, we've talked about quarterbacks and wide receivers, so now we want to look at those running backs. Adrian Peterson was the top fantasy running back in 2015, despite being 30 years old. He led the league in rushing yards and tied for the league lead in rushing TDs. Now he's 31, and only 4 running backs in the last 20 seasons have produced 200 fantasy points in a season at that age. He helped the Vikings win the NFC North last season, so can Peterson carry the team back to the playoffs? For that question, hello, Matthew Berry. We welcome Matthew back. Barry, what do you think here? Who's the best fantasy running back this year?
Hi, Molly. I think there's a lot of people that you could choose. My #1 ranked running back is Adrian Peterson. And it's not necessarily because of his ceiling, but because of his floor. We always talk about in fantasy, you can't win your league in the first round. You can lose it. You want safe. And that high floor for Adrian Peterson, every single season that he's played more than one game in the NFL, he's scored double-digit touchdowns. Yes, he is 31. He's also inhuman. This guy had the second best NFL rushing season in history 9 months after an ACL. So you think about that offense that they run in Minnesota. They want to run the ball, play good defense, win close ball games. Being indoors this year will certainly help Peterson. And adding Laquan Treadwell, another year of Stephon Diggs, Kyle Rudolph. They're adding to that passing game. Teddy Bridgewater a little more comfortable. I think they'll spread the offense a little bit more. Adrian Peterson, very safe. He's my #1 running back in fantasy this year.
Matthew Berry on hour 17, still not skipping a beat. Thank you kindly. As I said earlier, I trust in that man there with AP. But Mark Schler, I want your thoughts here. Who do you think is going to be the best fantasy running back?
Listen, man, Adrian Peterson, you can never go wrong with him. Le'Veon Bell, I don't know about the suspension or the potential suspension. You can't go wrong with him. I'm looking more at value guys. Todd Gurley is another guy that, I mean, is great. We all assume that Ezekiel Elliott will be great. But what about guys that are in systems that you know are going to touch the ball a ton? A guy like Doug Martin, you know he's going to get run. Jameis Winston should be better in year 2, even though I thought he was pretty spectacular for a rookie last year. So they should be better as an offense. He should get plenty of run. C.J. Anderson in Denver, he's going to be the bell cow. Gary Kubiak likes to give one back the majority of that workload. He's looked great in camp, a revamped offensive line, so you'd have to look at guys like that. Where can we look at the bottom of this thing? Think about this. Chip Kelly, before he traded away all his good players when he was in Philadelphia and got a guy that didn't fit in his system, you know, in DeMarco Murray, right? Think about them. They were the league leader in rushing yards his first 2 seasons. So what about Carlos Hyde? I know that.
David Johnson.
There you go, David Johnson, Arizona. But Carlos Hyde is a guy that's really intriguing to me if he can stay healthy. And we say that a lot about these running backs. But here's a system that's really difficult to defend with not only the rapid nature with which you call plays, but also in that zone system with a quarterback that can run. It opens things up. It spreads things out. So there's potential for big chunk gains with a guy like Carlos Hyde. And he can run that east-west system that DeMarco Murray really wasn't a fit for in Philadelphia. So those are some value guys at the end of the first, maybe second round, where you can really get good value, in my mind, for the running back position.
I think the answer is Todd Gurley. I mean, I love your Doug Martin pick in terms of value. Lamar Miller, too. Like, you got some guys you can get, you know, you don't have to use the top pick on to give you good production. But Todd Gurley, look, Ezekiel Elliott's on the top of a lot of guys' boards, a lot of people's boards. But even in college, was Ezekiel Elliott ever considered Todd Gurley? Todd Gurley is a kind of generational talent, in my opinion. And Adrian Peterson's one of the best who ever did it, but he's 31 years old. And Minnesota's going to look to throw the ball more as Bridgewater develops. So there's Peterson. Le'Veon Bell should be the #1 pick, but he's going to miss 4 games. So there you go. That severely diminishes. And that's a bigger chunk of the regular season fantasy schedule than even of the real schedule. So I look at Todd Gurley and think that's just the most talented guy. He's already had a year in the league. He's their whole offense, and I think he should be the #1 running back taken.
For me personally, the name that jumps out to my mind is David Johnson for Arizona. I thought about Todd Gurley a lot, but he's playing for Jeff Fisher, and they have a rookie quarterback that ultimately will get stacked. I could see people stacking the line of scrimmage and trying to impede Gurley because he's their ultimate threat, even though Tavon Austin is nothing to ignore. But I think they've got issues with the Los Angeles Rams and Jeff Fisher. He has to prove something to me. I think Gurley's going to get his, but I don't know if I would pick him #1. Adrian Peterson would be the safe pick because Teddy Bridgewater is still developing, but he's basically a game manager to some degree. They've got some issues with their wideouts. Got to find who's that guy, who's that stud to throw the football to. so therefore Adrian Peterson's going to get a lot of the touches. That's a safe bet. I don't think anybody could argue with that. But I think you look at Doug Martin, like you said. I think Lamar Miller in Houston would be impressive because even though Brock Osweiler and DeAndre Hopkins are there, Brock Osweiler is going to have something to prove. I can see Bill O'Brien running the football, but Lamar Miller, he's a big back, but he goes down easily, and that's one of the problems. Even though he's a big boy, you hit him, he's not getting too many yards after hits or whatever the case may be. I look at a guy like David Johnson, and here's what jumps to my mind. I think about Chris Johnson. I got these numbers in here. We saw the season that Arizona had, 13-3 last year. Carson Palmer throwing for 4,671 yards, completing better than 63% of his passes. Larry Fitzgerald, John Brown, Michael Floyd. Right. We know Jermaine Grisham. We know that these guys can play. You know that Carson Palmer won't hesitate to go deep. So they're not going to stack the line of scrimmage against Arizona like they would do against most teams. They have to respect that passing game. If you are Bruce Arians, what you're going to do is use that as an excuse to run the football. And when you look at David Johnson, he only rushed for 581 yards last year, but he only started 5 games. He averaged 4.6 yards a carry, and here's what jumps out of my mind. In those 5 games, 36 receptions, 457 yards. I mean, he played 16 games, but he started 5 games. 36 receptions, 457 yards. He's a dual threat. And now he's going to be one of the primary benefactors in that Arizona offense. I think he will see the ball more. I think Chris Johnson and Andre Ellington will get less reps, less touches. It's going to be about David Johnson, and I think that's the reason why you go with somebody like him.
I think one of the things that's interesting about that offense is they run more condensed formations than anybody else in football. And you think about that's counterintuitive when you think about Bruce Arians, because they want to throw the football down the field. For every check down, there's a touchdown. It's touchdown, 2 check down. I mean, that's how they operate their offense. They're going to take their chances. But so many condensed formations with tight ends in line, with Larry Fitzgerald motioning down and setting an edge. I mean, he's one of the most unselfish, if not the most unselfish player in all of football, certainly the most unselfish wide receiver in all of football. And when you have that, because you still have the threat of the speed outside, you get guys in that box. The outside, they get more outside big runs than I think any other team, because once they break contain, because they are in condensed formations, people are so nervous about the speed on the outside that, man, these guys hit it. And there is nobody to the outside to contain these running backs. And you saw it with Chris Johnson last year. You saw it as he got hurt and the transition they made to David Johnson. I think that's a great pick. I think he could be big this year.
Yeah, the only
Not
thing about
bad
Arizona,
for an amateur fantasy player.
You're killing it. I'm impressed.
Arizona has a deep and diverse kind of offensive weapons. But as a result, for fantasy, not always the best pick. Like, please, when we draft, take David Johnson. Let me take Todd Gurley.
But it's really, when you think about fantasy, because I'm a novice with fantasy football. I've never been in the league or whatever the case would be. But you pay attention to these numbers. I mean, fantasy is the kind of thing you're talking about when you're in the barbershop or at a barbecue or something like that. These are the kind of things you're talking about. It's really very simple to me. The bottom line is this. If you're going to touch the ball more than anybody as a running back, and you are a dual threat, and as a result, because of that, the quarterback is going to be looking to throw you the ball to take some of the pressure off of himself and to capitalize off the fact that the deep threat is going to the opponents are going to attempt to neutralize that, then that ultimately makes you more valuable.
A bell cow that can catch passes out of the backfield.
Especially for PPR leagues. But you brought up a great point about value, especially this year with all the receiver depth. I feel like people aren't going to necessarily take running backs right away as early.
Right, and I'll give you one more. Chris Ivory, don't sleep don't sleep on him. That guy's forehead is made of concrete. He's got rebar in it, and I'm telling you,
I'm sleeping a little bit.
I'm telling you, they're a physical football team right now. They've rectified some things in Jacksonville right now.
Yeah. Jacksonville is very impressive with the athletes that they've got there. Gus Bradley, we're going to find out about him this year because you got the talent there. But I will say this about Chris Ivory, and I know Chris Ivory can play. My issue is that, you know what? Why the Jets lose him? Why the Jets lose him? If anybody needed him, it was the Jets with Geno and ultimately an unproven Ryan Fitzpatrick before last year. Why is he gone from the Jets? That's what stays with me.
Expensive.
I wouldn't mind getting Blake Bortles either for a quarterback.
I don't know if that's the only
reason. Could be a good fantasy pick to get later.
Absolutely.
Oh, Bortles, absolutely.
Thank you kindly. When
got
we
it,
come
guys.
back, we're going to go to the tight end. Rob Gronkowski seems to be the consensus best tight end in the league, but someone at this desk thinks he won't be next season. We'll discuss that when we come back.